This kind of a place seems to be disappearing, especially in the suburbs and in the cities. You really don't see this kind of place anymore.
It has a past, it has the present, it's raised so many generations of people and made them good people.
This is for Joan. It's not about being a glitzy, like high-end riding facility. It's about being a safe place to learn and to thrive.
And I just love all the horses and I love to ride them, and I just don't think that they should take it all away.
These are the kinds of places we don't want to lose. But when it's gone forever. And that would be horrible.
You know, people that grew up here 1940s, 1950s, talk about Woodlawn Stables and they remember it.
Well, currently what's happening is there's a historic district that is in this small portion of Fairfax County that is separated by Route 1, and it's a major thoroughfare. And currently it leads also to a government base that has now got a new hospital and a couple of new responsibilities that is requiring more citizens to get to it for job purposes. And with that came about 20,000 new jobs, and the county felt like that it needs to now widen this road to increase access. Although that this has been on the books for many, many years, they've never had the funding, but Representative Moran was able to get a grant for Fairfax County that allowed them to widen this road. And for over a year and a half of planning, it was only supposed to widen Route 1 just enough that wouldn't put the stables in detriment. And unfortunately, a year and a half in the process, it came to light that a new bypass proposal was presented, and Federal Highways started moving forward with that bypass proposal. And the proposal actually would cut the bypass right through the middle of Woodlawn Stables.
Well, there's a bunch of different laws in play. There's the National Historic Preservation Act, there's the Federal Surface Transportation Act, which has a bunch of different acronyms. There's the National Environmental Policy Act, sometimes called NEPA. And all of these three acts interplaying together have some impact on historic properties. And there are tons of historic assets in the vicinity of this project.
It was once land owned by Washington, which he selected as the place for his granddaughter's home. He made that gift and that premise that she would sit there on Gray's Hill overlooking the rest of Mount Vernon. Adds to its importance. And I don't think that part of the story is widely understood by everybody. And that's where it gets me to the point of real concern when the trust now says, okay, our boundary is the National Historic Landmark. I'm like, no, it isn't. Your boundary, National Trust, and I will say that to them if I ever can face to face, is the whole setting. The neighborhood has been debased and changed, and the highways and the fast food joints and all that stuff. But there is a historic district that was created specifically to help provide the minimum sense of a setting appropriate to a woodlawn plantation. And the name is not Woodlawn Historic Site or Woodlawn Museum, it's Woodlawn Plantation. That's what Washington had there, that's what the Lewises had there. It was open fields, it was agriculture, it was equine activities, it was all of these things historically. And the bloodline starts with George Washington.
And then we have the stables complex that actually was completed by a coal heiress, and she was single, and she came and actually renovated all of Woodlawn at one point when it was not in its best conditions. So throughout the entire district, there's so much history represented, and Woodlawn Stables is the next era. This stables has been here for over a century, and Woodlawn Stables in name has been here for over 50 years.
And, you know, we talk about that. We talk about the history of the land, and we talk about the fact that Elizabeth Sharp, when she took over, you know, she was a single woman in a time when that did not happen, and she had money, and she came in and turned this place around and made this a viable working farm. And we've had women running it since and doing these things with it, which is really amazing. So it's not just a history that goes back to George Washington. It's a recent history as well. And I think that that's really important for our children to be part of that and to realize that there's generations here. You know, my sisters and I were here, my children ride here. You know, we all know each other, and we have grandparents dropping their kids off who rode here.
So there's a mansion that represents one portion, but the rest of the property, which lays out over entire land, also includes a historic cemetery and Baptist church.
It's actually extremely complicated. First of all, the Woodlawn Mansion itself is designated an historic landmark, which is the very highest level of historic designation any property can have. Then, you have the Quaker Meeting House, which is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, which is also a level. Then, the county has placed a historic preservation zoning overlay district on top of the entire district. Within that district, the district itself is eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places, but has never been listed. And there are several other properties within it that different entities have found are likely eligible as well. Like there's a bank barn within the Woodlawn Stables complex. There is another house called the Otis Mason House, which I've read sometimes they find to be contributing, or sometimes they find to be eligible, sometimes not eligible. Of course, you have Route 1 itself, which was designated as Historic Route 1 by the Commonwealth of Virginia back in the 2010 session due to a piece of legislation that I put an amendment on to get it designated historic throughout the entire state. It's an historic road. It has historic assets all up and down it because it's one of the oldest roads in the Commonwealth of Virginia and one of the most important roads back to colonial times.
The Woodlawn Historic District was created by Fairfax County in the early 1970s to provide a place for Woodlawn. Woodlawn has been owned by the National Trust since the early 1950s. It was, I believe, the first property they acquired and opened to the public. So it's part of the National Trust history because it's within 4 or 5 years of the trust being founded in the late 1940s. It's always been an important property in that regard, but it's certainly architecturally as important. With the addition of the Pope Lay House in 1964 or 5, whenever it came, it adds a unique dimension to the historic site, and in fact became one of the first junctions of contemporary architecture with historic architecture.
The Mount Vernon Estate is one of the largest employers in my district. It's more people visit the Mount Vernon Estate than any other historic tourist asset in the entire state of Virginia. 1 million people a year go through there. That's about 300,000-400,000 people more than Williamsburg. You know, Woodlawn has that connection to the Mount Vernon Estate. You know, the grist mill is right there next door. The distillery, which is another property that the Mount Vernon Estate is seeking to develop more interest in. And then you have George Washington's daughter's house right there next door, and right down the street you have George Mason's house, who's the author of the Virginia Declaration of Rights, which led to the Bill of Rights. So we have a lot of history in our area, and that's always been very important in terms of the identity of this part of Fairfax County. And it's also important in terms of economic development, tourism, a lot of different things.
This is a place where you can come and be with the animals. You can be outdoors. You can hang out in old historical buildings. I think I can remember Saturday morning was a special time for me because that's when a lot of the parents of the kids who were our students would actually come and hang around. The dads and the moms, they'd show up with the kids for the lessons, and they'd have their cup of coffee and their newspaper, and they loved to just come out here on a Saturday morning, say a summer or spring morning, and just chill out and see, you know, not just the equestrian activities, but everything that's happened in this natural environment. This place is just it's an oasis in the middle of this crazy place. And Washington, D.C. is a great place. It's a great area. It has been, always will be. So I think to maintain and to keep a place like this is huge.
He found this property. The last lessee had left. The office was deserted. There were 7 horses on the property and a caretaker taking care of them. And he realized that this was a possibility. So he looked into the lease with the National Trust, and within a month or so, we were open for business with 7 horses and 1 instructor and a few students that had been riding here in the past and realized that Woodlawn Stables was open again. We had no idea how monumental and life-changing and what a gift this was going to be to our family. We grew so quickly. Location, location, location. Parents could bring their students in, drop them off, go to the grocery store, come back in an hour. The kid was happy, happy, happy. Parents were happy, and we grew unbelievably fast. So then it was a process of finding good, safe, and pleasant school horses and great instructors that knew what they were doing, and that was quite a quest. But it worked beautifully for us. I believe from my heart of hearts that this was all meant to be, because this facility needed to be here. So we opened in September 1978, starting with 7 horses. We grew to 65, 45 school horses and 20 boarding horses. We had summer camps in the summer that kids would fight for those slots. We had a waiting list and a lottery system. We had 5 horse shows every summer where the public would come in and our students would compete.
Tom was a very successful attorney. He had a very good business sense, and he knew how to take a valuable piece of property as Woodlawn Stables and develop it into something that's just so precious to this area. The children, the generations of people that have come in and out, learned so much about horses, so much about life.
So I, as manager and the organizer and all of that, realized very quickly that what was happening to these young people, even the adults that were on our staff, was life-changing for them. Yes, there are organized sports. There's ballet, there's gymnastics, there's organized sports everywhere. There's this and there's that. But until you have a child or a young adult, teenager, in relationship to a horse that could be 1,000 pounds or more or less, with a good instructor teaching them how to take care of that horse and how to ride that horse properly, it's a relationship that will last with that person for the rest of their life.
It's not about being a glitzy, like high-end riding facility. It's about being a safe place to learn and to thrive. And that, I think, is super different than other things. In fact, I think that the way I'm sort of thinking about it, that the horses and the farm really provide like a framework or a stage for everything else to play out on, for the growing, for the learning, for the confidence building. This is the stage and the platform for that. And if the horses weren't here, if the farm weren't here, none of the rest of this would happen.
Another thing I learned working with my young people is that so many of them wanted to be on the barn staff. They didn't want to just take lessons. They wanted to get their hands dirty and muck stalls and take care of the horses and be on summer camp. And we had an agreement that was fine. And you do your job, and fantastic. If your grades fall through the slats, then we have to talk. We even had a system where some of our students could lease a horse. That wasn't a big part of the business, but there was an agreement with those students that you are welcome to do this. You have responsibility to this horse, you have responsibility to what we're doing here, but you have to talk to us. How are your grades? Are you keeping up with everything? We never, ever had to release a lessee student or a barn worker because of bad grades. They excelled, every single one of them. And I will always think that the responsibility of an animal like that, and the responsibility to the instruction and the students and the whole persona of Woodlawn Stables, really grew some great people.
Woodlawn Stables matters because it's the last large lesson barn in Fairfax County, number one. Number two, The number of buildings on this property are historic buildings. They need to stay here. This was the stables for Woodlawn Plantation, and I understand that George Washington kept some of the horses from Mount Vernon here as well. Number 3, this is a place where people can come and escape urban life. Even if it's only for 2 hours a week, when they come out here to get their horse ready for class, and they ride and they take care of their horse afterwards. Plus there is a bond between people and horses, and this is one of the places that promotes it and perpetuates it.
Oh, because they've all been like trained and stuff, but then other different kids get to ride them and groom them and tack them, and so they're just special because a lot of people have had experience with them.
And I just love horses a lot, and it's fun to ride them and to pet them and meet a new horse.
Some of them are like really old. They're gentle. They know how to be around us. And even though we're scared and everything, they kind of share their feelings. I mean, they're scared too. So when we're with them, we can like feel good about each other, because it's not, I mean, it's our first time, but it's also their first time with us.
Well, they're used to kids, and like they don't really get grumpy like when kids, like if they do something wrong, they don't really get that mad.
The horses feel safe too, which makes them, and like they feel really safe here, but there's like, they have their own stable and a really big grassy area over there. So they feel safer when we ride them, instead of like being all crazy and like worried, they're kind of more calm.
It's a safe haven. It's a little piece of heaven here in the middle of busy Fairfax County.
It's home. I mean, you've got things changing all over the place, just construction and just all this mess all over the place. This has stayed the same. It's still pure. It's dirt. It's horses, and it's something that you know. Yeah.
I love the horses. And like I would be sad if they made the bypass.
Woodlawn Stables matters!
I wouldn't really like it if it was gone, because it's like such a nice place and a home for horses. And it's like so nice here because like it's so close to my house, so I can always get to it, and I can always visit my buddy.
I really feel like it would mean losing a safe haven, like a haven for young people to come that doesn't have to do with wearing the right clothes and playing the right sport and having enough money. That this is a place that it's been an opportunity for people of all different kinds of socioeconomic status and talent and intelligence to come and just be themselves, be their level, be their fear, be their confidence, and have an experience with both a teacher and a horse or a pony to help meet them right where they are and help them grow and become a more confident, more comfortable, more capable person through their adolescence, through their childhood and adolescence. And of course, it's the same thing that's happening for adult students here. But as an adult, looking back on my own childhood, I know that's what I found here. It was a safe place where I could learn and make mistakes and have successes and be supported by my friends, by my teachers, by the people I looked up to, the people who believed in me. And that was everything I needed, because I wasn't getting that at my local public high school, for sure.
I think it's as an educator of 27 years and a principal for almost 8 years, a high school principal, I've always been involved in the whole child. And I believe in that every aspect. I certainly believe in the core academics, but I believe just as much as the extracurricular activities and all those other things that make up a total child and makes up their whole growing and learning. And places like this do that. And in fact, some of the students from the schools I've been at have worked here, just like I did for many, many years. And to hear their experiences were no different 25 years later just shows how special this place is.
And my parents were, they worked hard. They certainly didn't have the money to buy me a horse. But thankfully we did live near Woodlawn Stables, so after much begging on my part, they did sign me up for lessons when I was about 8 or 9 years old. And of course, that was my dream come true, getting to ride a horse, and a dream certainly that wouldn't have come true if Woodlawn hadn't been here, because like I said, we lived in the suburbs. My parents didn't have time to drive me out to the country every week for riding lessons, nor the money to buy me a horse.
And learning how to ride and learning how to care for them, it brought attention to myself that I wanted a career with horses. I wanted to do something as much as I could with horses and animals, and learning how to ride and take care of them. I decided to go to veterinary technology school, and that's what I'm doing now. I'm a licensed veterinary technician, and because of Woodlawn Stables, it's given me an incredible career with animals.
Well, I've had many girls come through Woodlawn that 20 and 30 years later I run into, who have told me how important Woodlawn has been to them to develop what they've become, what is instilled in them. It's not just riding. They learn care and love, and they learn how to maintain, and they learn how to, a lot of these girls would have been out on the streets, going to the malls and hanging. I've had many parents say that, if it hadn't have been for Woodlawn, I don't know where my daughter would have been. And not just daughters, all kids. We are open to all kids here, and no matter what. And that's the thing about Woodlawn, is no matter what, they found a way to give every child an opportunity to ride. Everyone had an opportunity to do that. Didn't matter their background, didn't matter their social status. Everyone got an opportunity to ride here.
It seems like there is so many more things that are tech oriented. Seems like a lot of kids are more into playing video games these days, not wanting to venture out, and this is kind of a magical place. You have this place that's in the middle of concrete, this beautiful, many acres of land, stables that allows you to get outdoors, to interact with animals, to interact with other people that enjoy the same thing.
Places like this are hard to find. I think they're harder to find now because of the loss of land. You need the land, you need the horses, you need safe horses. Huge liability issue if you don't have safe horses, and this facility offers that, and it offers that at a price that people can afford, that they can experience those horses. So even people that don't have experience, as I did with horses and knew that I already had a passion, can come and explore that. It's been shown in studies what horses can do and what they can provide for people, and that connection. Also for young girls, huge lessons in responsibility, the camaraderie and sharing that with people that share your passion.
But I also became a riding instructor too. So I had the opportunity to teach a lot of young girls. It does seem girls like horses more than boys, but we had our share of boys too. And I think it's great for them as well. But for young girls, it just, it gives you the sense, again, as I said before, the value of and the reward of hard work, of being responsible for somebody other than yourself. The exercise part of it, gets you outside, all that, and the self-esteem that it gives you too. And we just, I think back of, the girls that I taught once I became an instructor, and how this, Woodlawn and having the riding and having the experience really helped them. And, a lot of them I know now, and I know they're, bright, successful women, and no doubt because of my own experience, that really, that helped them as well.
Like, it's a space that's outside of the home. Like, if there's conflict in the home, this is a safe place to be, where there are adult supervision, there are peers who have similar values, and there's not that pressure of academics where there's some sort of graded performance. It's a safe place where you can come and play and learn without any sort of pressure, but it's safe because there are parents, there are adults, and there are other kids that are older kids looking out for each other.
We have every day in the news that our kids are sitting in front of video games, in front of TVs, that they're getting fat and they're not exercising, they're not outside. you come down here on any given day, and there's groups of kids from 8 to 18, there's adults for that matter, who would rather be mucking a stall and hanging out here all day than be sitting in front of a video screen.
I can't understand why we're even having this discussion. It doesn't make any sense to, in my opinion, to realign Route 1, a highway that is already here, clearly has the space for expansion. If this is about capacity, then all we need to do is widen what is already here.
Save Woodlawn Stables, we gave a voice to something that I think we've all kind of taken for granted, those of us who are here involved with Woodlawn, and also for those people who aren't involved directly in Woodlawn. We gave it a voice, and we started hearing from people that said, I would rather sit in traffic and be able to see the horses in the field, even though I've never ridden at Woodlawn Stables, than to have a bypass go through and lose that piece of history.
Got over 3,000 comments, petition signatures. We've also had over 500 people actually attend a public meeting, and which is remarkable. I've worked in government affairs all my life. I've never seen a local government issue bring out so many citizens, and it just goes to show really how important this place is to us. And I think in this age it's easy to dismiss something, a property, a building, or anything when we're really rushed. We say that it's going to be more convenient to have better traffic situation.
Sometimes we take the quicker way out and not the best way out. And it might be more expensive to do one of the other plans. I'm not sure about that, but I know the expense it would be and what it would cost to take this away, and what lost opportunities would be for kids for years on end. And not just kids, but adults too. I think there's people here who's, just like in schools where kids have come back and their parents were here as students, and then they brought their kids in, and that's what's been really neat about this, is the continued history of this place, besides the history of the entire area.
In the DC metro area, it's all about getting to your job, getting home, and making time to do more and more things, and especially in a society that everything's instant gratification. We have to have our iPods, we have to have our phones, we have to do things quickly. For 500 people to come out and say, no, stop. This place is that important that we're willing to take another 10 minutes on the road.
I was born and raised in Alexandria. My family been here all my life. I've driven up and down Route 1 all my life, and to turn your head and look over the fields and see those beautiful horses, it's going to be sad to see them.
We did not expect to see the facilities disappearing right and left as they did, because the developers were willing to pay more money for the property. And so one by one and one after another, the lesson barns disappeared. And there were 3 large lesson barns in the county. There was Great Falls Horse Center, and Great Falls Horse Center taught 600 lesson hours a week. There was Bay Ridge Stables in Centerville, and they taught 400 lesson hours a week. And then there's Woodlawn here. And Great Falls Horse Center closed. Their last lesson was November 30th, 2001. Bay Ridge Stables closed in August of 2002. The Horse Center was given 2 years. We had adequate notice, and we were able to disperse in an orderly manner. We had homes for all of the horses. We sold the tack. And so we closed and dispersed in an orderly way, although it was terribly sad. I taught there for 18 years. My horse lived there. I felt like I was running away from home, except that home was running away from me.
Well, that's the point of that trust campaign, This Place Matters, to get more people to realize the importance of places like this on their lives, on their family, on the history we are all contributing to.
Well, I think it's a shame that the property would even be coming in evaluation for disappearing. I just think that widening the road is obviously a necessary item to the BRAC realignment. There's suitable property on both sides of the road to widen it into place, was my perspective on it. And having an engineering background, had done civil engineering for the corporations I worked with before I became a farrier, I certainly understand the road process and the road widening. And I just think it's very, very unfortunate that a historic property of this size and this nature would fall to just a road developing project. I think it's just very sad.
The last thought, I want to get back to just the fact that I'm an architect and I'm trained, my whole professional life is to find a solution. Not to say, well, that's all I can do. Because if that's how I present myself to the world, fire me, disbar me, get me out of town because I'm worthless to you. And that's how I feel about those who say there's only two solutions and one of them isn't going to work. Well, another one isn't going to work either if you even think about the values at stake on this side of the highway. And I cannot reconcile that split or that unwillingness to even try to sit down and work out for a solution that is going to work. Okay, the ugly word has to come in, compromise, compromise. Nobody's vision is going to be realized in its perfection and in its completeness. But if we acknowledge the values on the one side, if the other side acknowledges that we have values on this side, somewhere there's a solution.
It's very easy, I think, just to push the road a little bit further to the north, keep it where it is, take a little bit of land on either side, and run it down the hill. I think running it around the bypass, around the backside of the church, down the hill, right through the middle of the stables complex and the fields, is very visually destructive to what's already there. I don't see how it is anything that's historically consistent with anything. Route 1 has always run through the middle of Woodlawn for over 200 years. And so I don't know how moving the road is somehow preserving the historic character of the property.
Personally, I'm disappointed in the trust for not exerting a much more affirmative leadership for the preservation of everything out there. The district, which Fairfax County, we're at the bottom of the list of everybody's understanding and caring about it. That's okay, we know that. But the district is there for a reason. It has as its focus the whole 125 acres of Woodlawn. It has included in its boundaries the mill. It has the church. It has the cemetery. It has the meeting house. And all of these pieces are seen as pieces. Seldom are they seen as a coherent community.
And I think that the loss of Woodlawn Stables can't be measured in dollars or traffic flow, but it's measured much more subjectively, which is the quality of the experience here that's unique and absolutely you can't replicate this in any other place inside the Beltway. That you can replicate a bypass somewhere else, you can replicate a couple of lanes in another location, but you cannot replicate what's happening at Woodlawn Stables anywhere else. And that is not measured in dollars, it's not measured in income, it's not measured in traffic flow reduction. It's measured in a subjective experience of the people who come into contact with Woodlawn Stables every day, all year long, year after year. And it's not just something that people experience once or twice, but this is a place where people go and come back to year after year after year, and they bring their children here, and their children grow up here. And it's a lineage or like a heritage of experience that's just unmeasurable in any sort of quantifiable way.
But everything I do is in function of trying to make things better for the preservation of our cultural heritage. And that's broad, and that's everything. Archaeology, artifacts, districts, buildings, people. You bring the light of recognition, you help others understand why something is valuable and important. Once they understand it, maybe they can become an ally. Maybe they're going to help. You never know.
I just couldn't imagine Fairfax County, Route 1, Mount Vernon without it. I always say that in this entire project, they need to fix Route 1. Yes, there needs to be improvements and things could look a lot more beautiful, but this is not one of them. This is already perfect.
Of all the money that e'er I've had, I spent it in good company, and all the harm that e'er I've done, alas, 'twas done to none but me. And all I've done for want of wit, to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be with you all. Of all the comrades that e'er I had, they're sorry for my going away, and all the sweethearts that e'er I had, they'd wish me one more day to stay. But since it fell unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I gently rise and I softly call, good night and joy be with you all. Good night and joy be with you all.